Welcome back to the Militia Madness Podcast. Today we are continuing our Archetype Overview. I think there's going to be 2 more episodes after this, focusing on combo and I think actually 1 more episode, because we've already done. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just combo.
But this week we are focusing on tempo. But before we get into that, Morgan, I believe you have a card for us.
Yeah, the one I am bringing today is one we've seen a couple times on the channel. I think maybe only once, but definitely like you saw it in a deck building video, which was Experiment 1. So this has been a classic of like aggressive decks in like Eternal formats and standard formats it was in. It's just a value 1-drop. It's a 1 mana 1/1. It in green has evolve and remove 2+1/+1 counters from Experiment 1. Regenerate Experiment 1. Oh, just is a nice turn 1 play that'll steadily get bigger. Is routinely like a 2 to 3 power creature by the time it starts attacking, and then becomes very annoying to kill.
Yeah. Probably one of the most pre-Modern Horizons set, one of the best 1-drops of all time, pre-Ragavan, Ocelot Pride, that nonsense.
At least one of the best just straight up beater 1-drops, because there's some more that you could defend for utility, but this just gets in there and does good punchy stuff. Because there was always the classic Experiment 1 into Colonian Tusker into Strangaroot Geist and all that kind of stuff decks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Greg Wesco won the Pro Tour Dragons Maze with that kind of deck.
Yeah.
It was trying to go it was a Celestia beatdown deck. They're trying to go Experiment 1 into Call of the Conclave into gives me shivers.
Yeah,
no, Experiment 1's a very, very good card. I think you wrapped it. Normally, I have a lot more to say on the card spotlights, but I think you wrapped it up perfectly. It's a very efficient beater that, if it sticks around, doesn't die to lightning bolts and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's like a 2-for-1 for your opponent.
Yeah, the only time it's really vulnerable is if it had already had to remove its counters, or if it only had 1 counter put on it already. And
or if you can be exiled. It will always die to stuff out, go for the throw. Well, it won't.
It'll always die to Journey to Nowhere, but yeah.
Yeah, Journey to Nowhere and Oblivion Ring and those types of things. But
possibly, is Destroy Evil Destroy? It probably is because it says Destroy Evil, but yeah. I can't remember. Ride's End. That's the other one I was thinking of.
Yeah, Ride's End and then the new Ride's End.
Yeah.
For Secret 6-7, whichever that is. But yeah, I think we've wrapped it up. It's pretty efficient. It's really good, and it dodges removal spells from the most popular removal colors, which are black and red.
Yep.
You can regenerate through black and red's removal. Yeah. It's not good against the blue and white removal, which is bounce spells and exile effects. But who cares? Yeah. So what we're talking here today is the tempo archetype, which I think is, of all the archetypes, the hardest to define.
It's my favorite.
Even in franchise Magic players, I think, get it wrong a lot of the times, because I think a lot of times tempo decks can look like aggro decks and tempo decks can look like control decks, but they're not.
Yeah, they're in between.
Yeah, they exist somewhere in between. They're very closely to a mid-range family, where I associate mid-range, in the simplest terms, I associate mid-range deck with being base black-green, where you're attacking people's hands, you're removing permanents, you're playing fair, and you're playing to the board, right?
Yeah.
Tempo decks I associate with basically the other 3 colors, with blue, white, and red. You're winning the game not necessarily because you're playing these massive 7 and 8 drops like your control deck's trying to do. You're more or less trying to outvalue your opponent because your cards are more efficient. So you're playing a lot of cheap counter spells that are not necessarily hard counter spells, but counter spells that buy you time, protect your threat. Like Memory Lapse, to me, is the peak of what a tempo counter spell is.
Yeah.
Mana Leak as well.
Mana
right? Where a control deck is interested in playing something like Counter Spell or it's not happening. Just hard counter it. I don't care. Just not happening. More tempo-based counterspells are just about delay, 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 slam a threat that I can protect, and then move on with my life. A lot like the Jeskai in general. Like when people think of a Jeskai deck, I think that's often more than not a tempo deck.
Yeah.
Blue black can do it too, but it's weird because I think tempo and the other next week we'll be talking about control combo. They can often slide into like, oh, this is an aggressive tempo deck. This is a control-y tempo deck. Like,
Yeah.
it
It's similar to
kind
mid range
of
where you can kind of get those like slants to it.
yeah. But I'm like my classic tempo deck is like the Geist of Saint Traff, Vendilion Click, Snapcaster Mage, that kind of core, where you have the option to be very, very aggressive and your threats are very cheap. And then you just have ways of protecting them or ways of removing blockers or ways of doing stuff like that. There's actually a really, really good explanation of what tempo is in a game plan, because even control decks can play for tempo.
Yeah.
So like episode of Spellslingers with Day 9 and LSV. They had a moment where LSV played a Voyaging End, which is return to our creature with owner's hand, scry one. Played it on Day 9's 6, 7, or 8 drop, maybe even a 5 drop. And the cutaway was, what I'm doing here is I'm playing for tempo. I'm getting ahead in tempo. I'm using 2 mana and a card to bounce his 4 mana and a card. So my 2 mana card traded for his 4 mana card and bought me another turn because he didn't attack me this turn, and he also didn't attack me next turn because he has to spend that mana developing a threat again. That's very, very tempo oriented, where I used 1 card and gained 2 turns,
Yeah.
essentially. Yeah, I think that's pretty simple to understand in the broad forms, but like, what do you think tempo looks like in our format specifically?
So I think a lot of the biggest stuff to look at is things that are like specifically like keeping you ahead on a resource just inherently, so like making sure to like draw for efficient like amounts of mana or like kill something but also like put down a creature on the board, like any way that you're just getting a little bit more but like not necessarily the best stats. So it's like if you look at it like Augur of Bolus is something like that I would call like a tempo card a lot of the time. Not fully, but like it's that leans into more to the control, but it's a tempo card for your control decks, which is just it is a body that also gets you a card. And then it'll now
Yeah,
do double duty.
I was thinking something more like Delver.
Delver itself, yeah, that's on the more aggressive slant. That was why I was trying to like avoid it, but
Yeah,
I ended up
but
going too far in the other direction.
it fits into that slot of like, this is a threat. I'm playing a threat. It's a cheap threat. And now the rest of the game, all I have to do is protect this threat. And I can do that by counterspelling stuff or by removing your blockers or by drawing more cards to do this, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest difference between tempo and a control deck is a control deck, when you try to remove their creatures, they don't care. Where if you do that against tempo, that's a positive play. Tempo needs its creatures a lot more, whereas control can be like, look, how I kill you is an afterthought. I have a commander you can't ever kill. I'll kill you with that. Or I have a sneaky snacker. I'll kill you with that. Whereas tempo really needs the board to win. Unless you're a red-based tempo deck, and you do get into games where sometimes you can shove removal spells to the face. But I would say that's few and far between in our format, especially because you just have less of it.
Yeah.
Whereas like a blue-red tempo deck in Modern, or like the Jeskai tempo deck that existed in Modern, can do that more realistically than our format can.
Yeah, like on like the need and defend your creatures, I would like also like put like probably like one of the most emblematic counterspells that we didn't say earlier for what a tempo deck is using in defending creatures is Spell Pierce, because it's not a counterspell that's useful for actually like aggressively countering your opponent's stuff. It's a counterspell that is very efficient for protecting your guys though, because it's 1 mana that charges your opponent 2. So even if like you're looking like shields down for quote unquote real counterspells, you can very easily hold this up to defend your plays.
Yeah, I would say like heavily blue. And I think blue does it the best just because blue does everything Tempo wants to do. Blue can provide your threats with like Tolarian Terror and Cryptic Serpents, which are very cheap. Cheap, but by the time you want to play them, they're cheap. Um, and I think Tempo, the thing it does is it's like one of the most interactive decks in the world, or it's like one of the fairest decks in the world. It wants to be, it's really about being disruptive enough.
Yep.
Like um, playing things that are just powerful enough. When you win games with Tempo, it always feels like you're winning on a razor's edge, and everything you do in that game matters. And if you make a mistake, it compiles against you.
Yeah, and that's honestly one of the things I like about it is it just feels like your decisions matter a lot at every stage of the game, rather than it feeling like, okay, I made my 2 decisions and we'll just see where it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, whereas like an aggro deck's like, I played my board, do they have the Wrath? Or, and a control deck is like, did I die by turn 5? Tempo and mid-range really feel like skill expression of the pilot is really important, both in deck building and in gameplay.
Yeah.
When do you counter and what do you remove is going to make you win or lose games so much more than anything else.
Yeah, and like, it honestly is like one of the annoying things about playing it though, is because it means that you do have to use a lot of brain power being like, okay, is this removal spell the one I counter? Because if I let this through, then play another guy, maybe I'll be in a more defensive position than with this one being down.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. Like, okay, how much mana are they leaving up on this turn specifically? Because if they kill my guy, maybe they'll tap out afterwards to play something, and then I can remove something and play another guy. Versus if I counter this, they'll try to kill it again and not let me get a kill spell out on my turn.
Yeah, it really rewards knowledge of the format. And for people listening to this going, oh, this deck seems fun, I'm new to the format, I guess I'll start playing it. No. Don't do that. I think Tempo decks, more than anything, you need knowledge of like, okay, what could they have here? What are they representing here? Yeah. What threats do I need to worry about in this spot? They are this kind of deck, so how many removal spells are they going to do? And especially post sideboard, like, is this Spell Pierce good? Because if they're on bolts, I think Spell Pierce kind of sucks against bolts because it's just almost never good enough. And your clock is almost never quick enough that saving your creature one turn is not going to be good. So knowing when to sideboard out those cards, Tempo is definitely a more advanced deck in our format, I think. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. Like, especially with like a format where we're just kind of like building stuff and like figuring out what's working. Like, it's going to be a lot harder to predict like what's coming out, except for like the couple of staple cards. So like, if somebody does come up with like something that is like very much like commander centric and is playing a lot of weird cards, you could just get hosed by having no matchup knowledge into it.
Yeah. Tempo is one of those things that you really, really need to know what your 75 is, and all of those 75 need to be targeted towards winning games, which sounds obvious, but like it's not necessarily the case in straightforward mid-range aggro or control decks. Like a mid-range deck is going to change a little based on the meta. A control deck is going to change a little. An aggro deck probably not that much because you're just playing efficient beaters and burn spells and then calling it a day. And if it's bad in the meta, you're not playing aggro. I mean, that's been historically pretty true where aggro decks were bad. They just didn't show up. Or in higher level power formats, aggro just basically doesn't exist. The best deck in Vintage being workshops and stuff like that. It's like mono red's not very good.
Like even
the
like
way
Legacy,
that we think
like
about it.
Burn's basically a gimmick. Is like you can play a bunch of bolts, but if your opponent just show and tells you on turn 3 or turn 2, then you're just dead.
Yeah. That's kind of my point with Militia. We don't, not that the show and tell, that we don't have that. And if show and tell ever was, we'd ban it immediately.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that it's wide open almost hurts tempo more than it helps. Because you need to have. It's the same thing with like Death and Taxes. Um, so people have explained that deck as like an aggro control deck, and I think aggro control decks can just be simplified to tempo decks. I
Yeah.
really think Death and Taxes is about being disruptive enough, throwing enough oil into those cogs to where they just jam up and don't work anymore, and removing just enough stuff to where you can play a threat and kill them with it. Same thing with Blue Red Delver, which I think does exist in our format as well.
Yeah.
The Blue Red Terror decks, which we've not shown on the channel at all.
We've
Stay
had like
tuned.
some stuff close to it, but not like all in on
Yeah.
it.
Breaches and Malcolm has gotten really, really close. And I actually
Yeah.
think you can build that deck in a way that it is just Blue Red Terror with no pirates in your deck.
Yeah, and then like Palamecia had like the package in it, but it was more focused on doing Palamecia stuff specifically, while just circumstantially having the terror package in it.
Yeah, that one definitely lent more towards a control deck that was just like, these cards are good, I'm going to play them.
Yeah.
You know, that type of thing. But like a deck that's all in on that, I do think that would fit the tempo range. And like what your interaction is should depend on what the threats are, right?
Mhm.
So if Sneaky Snacker got up, you would need to be playing what, Incinerate in your deck
Yeah, just like
to exile it.
anything that like has like a happenstance exiled to it.
Those cards would go up and play.
Yeah, Magma Spray.
Yeah, absolutely. Those cards would go up if you're worried about creatures that keep coming back, right? Whereas if those are not necessarily there, then maybe you replace your Magma Spray with a Firebending Lesson, right? So like knowing what those cards need to be, I would recommend a beginning player play whatever they want, really, but avoid tempo at all costs because it's or be prepared to build broad and then narrow down as you understand what your local meta is.
Yeah. Because I do think like, especially like going into this, like since tempo is more of a generalistic deck, like if you're wanting to build a deck for the format, especially because it's like a commander based format, I would recommend building something more commander specific, which does not lend itself to being a tempo deck unless like you're going for something very specific.
Yeah.
So, just build like a fun deck, and hey, maybe if it eventually becomes tempo, then it does. But otherwise, have fun with your commander because you're going to be seeing that card more than every other card in your deck.
Yeah, I would say as a new player, come into this format with the intent of having fun. So, like, if a commander sticks out to you and you're like, oh man, I want to play that card because I really, really like Knights, or like the Windgrace card. I really, really like Knights. I'm gonna play Knights. You can do that.
Oh, my favorite deck so far has been Brawlios. And like,
yeah,
you probably wouldn't look at that and be like, hey, this is the best card ever, but it's like, this has a surprisingly good game plan and it's fun.
Yep.
And
my first commander that I ever built, the one that I've had the most fun with is Green Goblin, and like Soul Sister variants, which were really, really good. I had a lot of fun with those.
Oh man.
But yeah, just in general, I think format wise, if you're trying to win, maybe don't start with a tempo deck because you're going to lose a lot. You're basically going to lose. You're setting yourself up to lose a lot of games to yourself because it's like, oh, I didn't play Fanged Flames and they played Garden of the Guild Pacts, or oh, I didn't. My Spell Pierce was really weak because their removal spells were 1 and 2 mana, so that was really rough. Or I went too all in on protecting my creatures and not enough interaction, or
which
tempo.
A note to that, like with tempo decks, is like you might not want to play them initially because they're harder to like play well, but it can also be a good time, like if you're getting above that like first hurdle and being like, okay, I want to like learn more about the game. A tempo deck could be very good as like a second thing to build, so that you now have to look at your opponent's deck a lot more critically and actually like try to understand it as you go throughout the game, and can be even very good for like making sure that you're talking to your opponent like after the game to be like, hey, like what were you doing there? I was trying to play around this, and then that can actually like help you learn by having more interactions with your opponent and like actually learning that.
Especially this format, right? Like because right now we don't have established tournaments and game stores, right? So you're playing with your friends. So if you're trying to get better at Magic in general, I would say, yeah, tempo decks have the most transferable skills from our format to anything else. Because knowing what to counter and knowing when to counter, knowing how many protections supposed to put in your deck, knowing how many removals supposed to put in your deck, knowing how many threats to put in your deck. There's a lot that goes into building a tempo deck that I think if you wanted to get better at the game and you're okay with losing to yourself, if you're the kind of person that doesn't want to lose 4 games in a row to learn something, don't play tempo because it's very likely that's going to happen. But if you're the type of player that doesn't really factor in wins or losses into you having fun and you just want to get better and you can take 4 losses in a row and be like, okay, well, what did I do right? I did this, this, and this right, and I did this, this, and this wrong. What does my opponent think I did wrong or right? Well, they think I did this, this, and this, and this, this, and this, and that's the type of player you are. Then absolutely do it. But I'm the type of person that if I go 0-5, I'm not gonna have a good day. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like I definitely am also like in a similar boat where it's like if I go completely all losses, I will be a little bit tilted. But I do have the Dark Souls player brain where I'm like, okay, I at every point in this I see like a junction where if I made like 2 different decisions, I had a chance, and my brain loves that part. So that's why I'm like a little bit of a tempo player masochist, where it's like I'll be pissed, but there's a little itch in my brain that's like, but you're learning, you'll get there.
Yeah, and that's the attitude that you need to have when you're playing tempo. How long has this episode been going for?
Let's see, 22 minutes minus like 1 or 2 for like the bit we're cutting out.
Yeah, so 20 minutes. That's about good.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Militia Madness podcast. Again, bear in mind, schedules may change. I'll remind you guys ever so often.
Yep.
I might even put a post up. Probably won't, but whatever. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. This week coming up will be a regular Militia week.
Yep.
Last week was the. Hold on, let me get the time frame in my head right. I believe last week you saw Sealed Progression.
Yeah.
Yes. Last week you saw Sealed Progression, so hope you enjoyed that. But again, remember to like, comment, subscribe. I'm Hunter.
I'm Morgan.
Signing out.
Yeah.